Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I wanted to riff for a few minutes on a post that I did not that long ago and some insights and some feedback and some questions that I got from that from my incredible community. And I wanted to take some time to dive into it further. So the post said, "You will shock yourself with how creative and alive you actually are when you stop doing shit you hate and quit engaging in all the unnecessary drama that so many relationships run on." And then that led to a conversation on if I'm in a pocket of creative energy, like there's a lot of creativity coming through and there's a lot of beautiful momentum, how do I not sabotage that? And then I inquired a little bit further into the sabotage, and what this person was referring to was the sabotage of essentially using relationships as an off-ramp for our creative energy. So like we detour with the romantic relationship, and that ends up sabotaging the creative flow. So I wanted to talk about sabotage today because it shows up in love and it shows up in creativity. And oftentimes the intelligence behind it is the same. And what I've come to learn is that anytime that I have sabotaged a relationship or a creative project or a creative opportunity, that there was actually a bigger reason why that happened. And in terms of a relationship, if I successfully sabotaged a relationship, it is 100% because that relationship wasn't the one for me. Whether, it doesn't even matter like the quality of the person. It has to do more with the resonance of the connection and what it's ultimately in service to. And you will never be able to sabotage something that is truly for you. And what happens with that teaching a lot of the time is that people can use it as a pass for bad behavior, being like, well, if it's truly for me, I can act like a first-class asshat and they will just keep coming back around and it'll always be there and it'll always work out another time, another place. No. No. This is not a permission slip to be unrelational. But sabotage happens when there's a part of us that understands that we are not yet able to hold the magnitude of what it is that we say that we want. So I've talked about this a lot in the relational space, that you can want something and simultaneously not be ready to have it. Like people want relationships all the time and they want these, lifelong partners and like you and me together against the world kind of love. But that kind of love requires a lot more from you. And if someone is not prepared to offer that up and be that person, whenever a relationship that meets that criteria on the energetic realm comes in, they will always sabotage it until they learn how to create the capacity within themselves for deeper feeling, for more self-awareness, for being able to show up in the relationship in the ways that it needs in order to thrive. So a lot of the times that will require patching up energy leaks wherever those may be. And so the process of kind of cleaning up our energy leaks relationally, that can take some time because you don't always know where the energy leak is because it's often in your blind spot. So if you track your sabotage in your relationships, it will give you the roadmap. It will show you where your energy leaks are. If you are able to really track your own behavior, your own experience through your relational world, you will be able to pinpoint, oh, okay, that relationship fell apart over here because XYZ. Where's my energy leak in that? Where was I not quite in alignment with what I said that I wanted? Or what was it about them that wasn't totally in alignment? And then what was going on with me that I entertained that? Right? So there's a lot to look at there. And so I always think of sabotage as a sacred companion of sorts. It's always going to reveal to me the information that I need in order to fine tune my personal self and my practices and how I'm showing up in the world. And ultimately, like, if I meet someone who I'm truly resonant with and I'm meant to have a relationship with that person, I show up differently. It's just what happens. It's not a truth that people like to admit, but it is true. That when you've done the work to come into alignment with everything that you say that you want, and then what you want shows up, you don't sabotage it. And anytime before that where you have said, like, I want the thing, the thing shows up and you sabotage it, well, you're not quite ready for the thing. You're not quite ready for it. And that's okay. Because the process of getting to, the relationship that really clicks for you is a process of learning yourself. It's a process of healing. It's a process of integrity cleanup. It's a process of really getting to know your shadow and integrating that. Like, you can't actually have a healthy relationship if you are not in relationship with all parts of you. If you're still compartmentalizing yourself, if there are still parts that you kind of don't let people see about you, unfortunately, you're not fully ready to be in that type of relationship. You can still be in relationship, but it's not going to be the type of relationship that really sets your heart on fire. Those relationships require all of you. They require you to know yourself fully and to open the door and let someone in. So in the relational space, when we are sabotaging, it's likely because there are still those doors that we haven't entered with ourselves. And we know that if we enter into a relationship of this caliber, those doors, like, you can't keep them closed. So in many ways, the sabotage is kind of a control tactic to maintain some sort of control over love, which, if you understand love, you understand that you can't control it. But that's what we learn along the way. Okay, so I wanted to just riff on that side of it before we position and go into creativity. Because when we have this creative uptick, so we're in a portal of creative flow, we are moving and grooving, things are good, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I want to keep it going forever. And sometimes we will need to get schooled in that, because you can't actually maintain that particular level of creation forever. Creativity requires seasons. Just like crops do, creativity is very similar to growing a garden. There are going to be seasons where you're planting seeds, seasons when the seeds go dormant and the soil rests, and then seasons when the seeds begin to sprout, and then seasons where it's in like full form and then you harvest. Like, there are different seasons to your creativity. And when we want to keep the flow going and we don't want it interrupted, what we do need to do first is just to come into right relationship with the reality that creativity isn't meant to be a full-blown, like, I keep seeing this visual of a tap that's like flushing water at like full steam. It's like almost like a dam breaking, but it's like a faucet. And when we have those seasons where that creative faucet is on, we're like, this is so rich. This is so amazing. I just want to keep this forever. But the reality is you can't keep that up forever. Creativity requires you to really be in right relationship with rhythms and seasons. And if you had a creative tap that was on like that the whole time, your human would glitch. Your human would not be able to run that much energy 24/7. Like, that's just not how we're designed. And if we make wrong the seasons where it's a little barren, then of course, when the seasons of massive dam breaking flow happen, we're like, I just want to keep this for forever. And then if we aren't really honoring that cyclical nature with our creativity on a day-to-day basis, then sometimes we will kind of distract ourselves with a relationship. It's a way to kind of titrate the flow a little bit and like plug the energy into other places. So sometimes it's because like the sensation of that tap flowing is so intense on the body, and human beings are notorious for not wanting to feel sensation. Even if it's good sensation, we have a cap on how much pleasure we will let ourselves feel, how much sensation we let ourselves feel. So if it's hitting that threshold for you, then the invitation, instead of dumping it into a new relationship, could be, oh, let me notice this is where my threshold of pleasure, of goodness, of creative flow is. Let me see if I can just expand it a little bit more. Can I stay with those sensations? Because whenever we sabotage our creativity by going into a relationship that we know is not good for us, oftentimes it is a sensation issue. Like, there's too much energy moving through the system and we don't know how to ground it. And so we end up grounding it by plugging it into another human and off-gassing it over there. Now, what I will say about that, like, you will never find me making that wrong, because it becomes really great material for your creativity. No joke. Like, what if everything was in service to your creativity and to your creative expression? What if we took that frame? What if we took the frame that, okay, I have a lot of creative energy moving through me, and this person showed up and I feel compelled to lean into that. What if that was serving your creativity too? What if it actually wasn't sabotage? And even if that thing doesn't work out, it can still be in service to your creative energy, because one, it's either going to teach you, okay, that there's a very specific type of person that when I plug my energy into, it does not amplify my creative force field. And so that when I plug into those types of people, I'm doing it most likely because there's a part of me, very similar to what I was talking about at the start. There's a part of me that doesn't fully feel ready, or maybe like legitimately I don't have capacity to hold the magnitude of my creative expression yet. And so I'm learning how to expand my capacity to hold my full expression. And as I'm doing that, I detour into these relationships, whether they are, short little romances, or they are long entanglements, or they're situationships, or full blown relationships, who knows? But when that happens and those dynamics aren't serving the creative amplification, then we want to look at like, oh, this is actually probably is just a capacity issue when it comes to being able to hold the magnitude of my creative dream. And that is a very normal thing. And, potentially in the future, I will be able to spot those types of relationships and make a different choice. So when you start to see like, oh, I have choice in the matter. And what if that charge, because those types of people, there's always a fucking charge with. It's almost like this intoxicating hook or spell that comes over you. You're like, oh my God, I have to be with you, right? And when you start to recognize the signature, the energy signature of someone who kind of takes you off course a little bit, once you've decoded that, maybe you use your art, your medium to explore that experience. And once you have that blueprint, it becomes much easier to spot. And then in the future, you can sit in a place of choice and free will and say to yourself, okay, I'm having this creative season right now where I am like so on fire, and a part of me really, really wants to dive into that. And then there's a part of me that really, really doesn't. And the part of me that really, really doesn't is the part that is intoxicatedly attracted to this particular energy signature. And I know what's going to happen there is when I plug my energy in, it's going to siphon that excess creativity. So then think of your creativity like a tank, right? And so you plug into those types of relationships that don't amplify your creativity, and it drains your creativity tank, usually to zero. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm done with this relationship. This is not working for me. And then you have to start back at zero. So you're no longer in that creative overflow. So you have to build back up. So you're actually buying yourself more time. You're buying yourself more time to build more capacity. Okay. So again, nothing is really off purpose if we have the frame that everything ultimately is in service to our creative expression, to the dreams in our heart. Like, you have a choice. You can see the things that happen in your life as though they are not in service, and you will suffer. You will create so much suffering. You will be in these spirals of shame, blame, make wrong, judgment, and you will just be marinating in that toxic soup. You have that choice. Or you have the choice to see everything that occurs in your adult life as though it is in service to who you are becoming and ultimately what it is that you want to create in the world. The amount of side quests and the off-roading I've done in the last 17 years, it's been insane. And all of it still leads me exactly where I want to go. Sometimes you got to take the scenic route. Sometimes you got to do it for the plot and go off and fuck the dude or fuck the chick that you know is bad for you. But you're like, you know what? This is going to make a great story. This is going to be great for my art. So when you do it from a place of choice, you no longer can be victimized by your underlying patterns as well. Like, you're coming at it from a place of, I'm a sovereign adult. I have free will here. No one is forcing me to be in a relationship at any point in my life. Like, where we live in the world, that is not a thing. And if you're listening to this podcast, you are likely an artist, a creative, or a visionary, and you've got big dreams. And so in order to really bring those dreams to fruition, you have to be in your sovereignty. You cannot be getting whipped around being like, oh my God, life is happening to me. You can't. You got to give up that victim consciousness. You have to step into sovereignty consciousness. That's creator consciousness. If you're going to create your dreams to life, you're going to create your art to life, you have to be in that creator consciousness, which is, I am making a choice to do this. I know the outcome. I know what this energy signature is all about. I know exactly what this type of person is all about. And a part of me really wants to go for it. So I only have one life. I'm going to fucking do it. And then there will be times when you don't want to do it for the plot. And when you can sit in that space of awareness and be like, oh, okay, I'm actually that impulse to jump into a new relationship or, jump into a dynamic with someone who I know is not good for me, or like revisit someone from the past where you're like, oh, this is so toxic. And it always ends the same way. And instead of doing that, you're like, oh, but I can see the impulse. I can feel the impulse to do that. And the impulse to do that is signaling like, oh, there is a creative flow here. And the creative flow matters to me. You don't sabotage things that you don't give a shit about. Like, you sabotage things that matter to you. I know it doesn't make a ton of like brain sense, but when you let this one like really go in, it will make heart sense that we can be deeply afraid of having the thing that we most deeply desire. And if that's what's going on, if actually having your creative dreams come to life, then of course it makes sense why you would not only feel the impulse to off gas and like drain that energy, but it also makes sense why you would just jump in and do that. And so we have to have grace for ourselves. Like, and when we can hold reality and we can look at it cleanly and say like, oh yeah, duh. Of course I feel that impulse because this shit matters to me. And I'm actually like really afraid of it working out. I'm really afraid of actually having the thing, because if I go all in on my creativity, that's going to change my fucking life. And if my life changes, I'm being thrust into the unknown. That's scary. Do I trust myself to traverse the terrain of the unknown? Because sometimes that's what that is all about. Is just understanding that there's a part of us that is afraid to actually have what it is that we want. Because in having what we want, it changes our life completely, and we don't have a map. We don't have a map for something that hasn't happened yet. We only have maps for things that have already happened. So sometimes it can feel more comfortable to our psyche to regroove and go into old relationship dynamics, old relationship patterns, or an old relational archetype, because it's familiar. And at least there's some certainty when you're playing in a familiar pond. Like you have the map for that. You know how that's going to go. And again, if you're doing it from a place of conscious choice and you're like doing it for the plot and you're like, yeah, I want to have a couple orgasms and have a good time, and that's that. That's very different though. Because if you come at it from that place of sovereignty, that is actually going to serve your creativity. But if you come at it from a place of victim consciousness, like this is happening to me and I have no control, well, then that is going to leak your creative energy. So really what it comes down to is, can we have more approval for our humanity? I will say this until the day I die. It's one thing that I will just continue to hammer on is your freedom exists inside of your ability to find right relationship with reality and bring approval to that. Like, can you be in approval of reality, of the choices that you're making, and understand that they are choices? And when we have a creative dream and we are feeling that high sensation, and oftentimes when we're feeling that flood of creativity, it's a flow that feels really, really, really good. And if we've had previous maps of what it means to be human in our life, that life is hard, people let you down, pain, 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 suffer, 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 suffer. Well, that map has no real data about pleasure. It has no real data about what genuinely feels good to you. And so that can also be a trigger that can send you, on the downward spiral back to, the people that you should not really be with. Because you know what that's going to be. You know how that's going to turn out. So what I would say is, like, really get clear on the energetic signature of the type of people that when you go into relationship with them, they really pull you off course. Get clear. And then put a boundary around that and be like, absolutely fucking not. I won't even do it for the plot with people like that. But then if someone comes into my life and I feel enlivened, I feel lit up, I feel inspired, I feel creatively juiced, it's amplifying my creativity, of course I'm going to lean into that. Of course I'm going to do it for the plot, even if that's not, a quote unquote serious relationship. I really think we need to bring back lovers. This whole world of social media and personal development and therapy, it's great. It's great. But it has so many people in their fucking heads trying to avoid pain that they are not living anymore. They're not just following that thread of their desire. They're not letting themselves ride that wave of aliveness. There's a whole concept of like summer love for a reason. Because people fall in love in the summer and they have these, love affairs, and then they go their separate ways. That's okay. And sometimes this comes down to like really being in approval of the type of relationships you want to be having, not the type of relationships that society tells you should be having. Because I think that there are people who get stuck in, let's say, polyamorous circles when it's not true for them to be polyamorous. And then there are people who get stuck in monogamous circles and it's not true for them to be monogamous. And then I think the majority of people live inside the space of those two polarities, those two extremes. And yet we're only really given one kind of flavor, or now there's a few more, but of these socially acceptable relational dynamics, when really you can just fuck the rules and make your own. And what I will say with that is, if you want to do relationships in a more unconventional way, if you want to have these lovers, there's nothing wrong with that. But you've got to be clear and concise about what it is and what it isn't. You have to be emotionally and relationally mature and responsible by informing people exactly what the parameters are that you are wanting to play inside of. And then let them choose. See, most people withhold that information And then they try and get their needs met in these like really shadowy and shady ways. And that always will blow up in your face every single time. Because it's not clean. Because there's no integrity there. And even casual relationships require agreements. They require communication. They require containment. It's just different agreements, containment than, a serious monogamous relationship or a serious polyamorous relationship, right? But to think that you don't have to communicate or create agreements or containment in any form of relationship is just relational immaturity. There's nothing else to that. So, knowing that you are an incredibly mature and responsible and integral adult, all you've got to do is like really tune in. Like, what is the true expression for me in this season of my life when it comes to relationships? Is it a serious long-term relationship? Is it a polyamorous relationship? Is it a lover or maybe a series of lovers? Like, what is the true thing that will really be in service to me maintaining this flow of my creativity? Because where I think we also do ourselves dirty is that we have this very all or nothing thinking that can lock in of like, we can only be in our creative energy and we have to say no to relationships, or like we can only be in relationships and have to say no to our creativity. Anytime you're doing that, you're still compartmentalizing. You're still cutting off parts of yourself. So the better thing to do is to just get right with yourself. Be honest. If you have sexual needs, if you have connection needs, if you have relational needs, that's okay. You're allowed to have that. That is very normal. And if you allow those needs to be met inside of parameters that actually work for the season that you're in, it will always enhance your art. It will always serve your creativity. But this requires you to be operating at a much higher relational level. Like, we can't run the games or the lack of communication or the, I expect you to just know without me ever having to articulate anything. Like, all of that shit has to go. Like, we've got to leave that, because it is, if you pull those patterns into your creative season, you're just going to create a mess. And like I said, if you create the mess, you create the mess, and then you turn it into art. You use it in service to your artistic expression. However, I would love to see less relationally chaotic artists and creatives and more relationally responsible artists and creatives who just really back themselves in what form of relationship they want for that season. When I'm in a big creation season, I'm rarely available for a serious long-term relationship, because I know what a serious long-term relationship requires in order to build. And at that season, I am not available for that, because that particular muscle is being channeled somewhere else. And I love and respect relationships enough, and I love and respect people enough to be clear about that, to be honest about that. And I will tell you that in past seasons, there have been people who have been upset with me over that, who have wanted a more serious relationship than what I was available for. But I was always clear from the jump. This is what's true. this is where I'm at. If you try and play a game of like getting me to change my mind, you're going to be really disappointed because I'm not going to change my mind. And so you've got to know yourself so well, and you've got to be able to back yourself to be able to say, this is actually what I want. This is what I'm available for. This is what is going to serve me and the relational dream in my heart, but also the creative dream in my heart. You know, you do get to have it all. This idea that you can't have it all is ridiculous. Like, that is very like old paradigm, patriarchal paradigm programming. Like, ew. Ugh. Not the vibe. You get to have it all. But in order to have it all, it requires you to be a fully sovereign, responsible, respectful, integral human being who does not abandon the soul of their art, does not abandon their human, and creates relationships in a way that are in service to love, in service to creation. There are plenty of people who are totally okay with having a casual lovership. It's so fun. Like when you have clear agreements and you can just go and enjoy each other and you're like, yeah, this is my lover. Like, it's such a vibe. It's such a vibe. And when you really back yourself like that, you will know whether someone can meet you in that or not. You know, there are people who are behaving that way, but they're not in approval of it. So they play these fucking games with themselves and with other people of saying like, no, I want something serious, but they're actually acting like a player in their back end of their life. You're like, something's not quite adding up. But you know what? When you see that, you're like, this is going to make for some great creative inspiration for me. And you can watch it from a distance and you can let their life be a train wreck. You don't have to welcome the chaos train. And as a creative, I would highly recommend that you don't. That you can lean in to these, you know, mini relationships, these casual relationships, loverships, dating, a full-blown relationship, as long as it does not take you away from the soul of your art, the soul of your creativity. Because if a relationship takes you away from that, it is not a relationship that was ever in service to love. That's a sobering thing to sit with. But as an artist, as a creative, again, like you can sit with the magnitude of that and pour it into your art. Write songs about it, write books about it, write poems about it, paint paintings about it, make dances about it, like, yeah, make sculptures. Like, you can literally take that and turn it into art, alchemize it into art, so that you can really set this standard for yourself of, if I'm in a creative flow period of my life and I feel that impulse to plug in to an old pattern and burn off my creative energy, I love and respect myself and my creativity so much that I'm not willing to do that anymore. But I will say is that if I'm in right relationship with reality, maybe there is a part of me that feels a little malnourished. Maybe I do need some physical intimacy, some sexual intimacy, some emotional intimacy, spiritual intimacy, whatever it is. You can't deny that. You can't gaslight yourself to say you don't need what you need. But also, it's so important as a creative that you go about getting those needs met in a way that respects everyone involved, including yourself. And the best way that you respect yourself in that is by being clear of, this is what I'm available for. This is not what I'm available for. Watch how someone operates with that information. And then if they're on board with it, then you co-create the agreement. You're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And it includes their needs, your needs, and then off to the races you go. I had a relationship like this a long time ago. This is before I moved to Vancouver. And I had made the plan to move. And I made that plan in December. And I was planning to move in April. And it just so happened that a former lover of mine had kind of come back on the radar. And he had asked me to go for dinner and catch up. I'm like, sure. And so we were sitting at dinner and I was telling him about all the things that had been changing in my world and that I was moving. And he was just really inspired and really invested in what I was creating. And then I just said to him, I was like, you know what I would really love? He was like, what? I'm like, I would really love to just have like a mini relationship, like a temporary boyfriend from January to April 22nd or 23rd, whenever the day before I was leaving, where we basically like just play house, we have sex, we go on dates, we make food, we watch some movies, and it's very chill, but like it also has a very clear start date and a very clear end date. Would you be down? Do you want to do that with me? And to be fair, like him and I have had like romantic entanglements, and like I had known him since I was 18 and I was 28 at this point, or 27. And so he wasn't unfamiliar to me, and we had had different iterations of our relationship. We had dated, we'd been lovers, we had been friends, we had been colleagues, like lots of different forms to our relationship up until that point. But we hadn't seen each other in probably a year or two. And so I just put it out there. I'm like, the worst that he can say is no. And that we just go back to how it was. Like, there's actually no loss here. But the best thing that can happen is that he says yes, and then my needs get met, his needs get met, we have a fuck ton of fun, and then when I move, the agreement changes, like it ends. And much to my delight and surprise, he said yes, and it was one of the funnest relationships I have ever had, because it was so clear. We didn't have to do any of these mind games of like, does he like me? Does he not like me? Does she like me? Does she not like me? None of that. I was just so clear on my desire. Like, this is what I want. And I want to do it with you. I don't want to have sex with other people. I don't want to be having sex with someone who's having sex with other people for this period of time. Like, is that something that you want to? He said yes. And so we had this really fun little love affair from January until April. And we made lots of dinners together. We had lots of sex. We had, great movie nights. It was awesome. And then I moved, and we had a conversation after I moved. And because I obviously wanted to close out that container properly. And we got on the phone, and I asked if he had any feelings about it and if there was anything that we needed to talk about. And he's like, no. The agreement was clear. January until the day you moved. And it was such a relief on my system. I was like, oh. And it gave me a map. It gave me a code. I hate saying that, but like it's true. Into unconventional relational dynamics and what is possible when you lead with clear desire. And that you can have your needs met, they can have their needs met. No drama. There was zero drama in this agreement. We had fun. He didn't break the agreement. I didn't break the agreement. And then when we had our conversation once I'd moved, guess what we did? We made a new agreement. And I was like, I had so much fun with you, but also I'm like starting this whole new chapter in a new city. I don't want to be tethered to a relationship or to the old city. But what do you think about this? He's like, oh, okay, here we go again. Tell me. And I'm like, would this work for you? If anytime I come back to my hometown and I'm single and you're single, you want to just go on dates. But only if you're single, I'm single, and it still feels true. He's like, absolutely. And we did that for 2 years. Every time I went back. And the only reason it stopped was because he moved. And ironically, he moved to the town where my grandparents live. And once he moved there, like he ended up finding a more serious relationship, and we had a conversation about that, and we transitioned into a very clear friendship. And I did get to see him, I think it was in 2017 or 2018. And it was clean. You know, we hung out. He came to a family function, hung out with my family. We had, some lemonade. It was very wholesome. And then he went back to his life. I went back to mine. See, like, you can keep reinventing relationships alive. That's the cool thing. That's the moral of the story, is that as a creative, you have an upper hand here. You have the creative vortex. You can see and you can feel. So do yourself a solid by actually backing your true desire. By saying crystal clear, this is actually what I want and what would bring me so to life for now. And then you do that for as long as it feels true. And then once it's no longer true, then you pivot. Then you have another conversation and you say, okay, this is actually no longer true. This is what is true for me going forward at this stage, this chapter. So you keep reinventing the relationship alive. And whether that is you go from friends to lovers, back to friends again, or you go from lovers into a full-blown relationship, or you just complete the dynamic and you go your separate ways and you never speak again, but there's no bad blood. There's just reverence. There's just joy. There's just appreciation for having had that relational experience at that, point in time. And when we start to see things as though they are in service to who we're becoming, in service to our creativity, in service to our vision, in service to our dreams, we show up differently. We take our creativity more seriously. And when you take your creativity seriously, you're able to feel those impulses. Sometimes you're going to run them out. Sometimes you're going to play them out. And when you play them out, you get really important information that helps you fortify your integrity with yourself and what really works for you in your creative energy. And so if you've had to play it out, no big deal. No shame here. My relational container, the ladies in there yesterday, one of them, she's been working with me for quite some time. And she's like, one of my favorite things is the level of curiosity and care and approval. She's like, in 10 years of working with you, I've never felt judged. And it's true. There's nothing you can bring me that I am going to be like, ew. Because I'm in approval of being human. And everybody's behavior makes sense when you have enough information about them, when you know enough of their story. And as a creative, it's your job to get your story on the canvas, on the page, in the movement, whatever it is, however it is that you express. That's your job. That's your dharma this lifetime. That's your devotion. So if you can allow yourself to be in that flow of your creativity, when you're in a season of abundance with it. Allow yourself to enjoy that. And then also like really be honest with yourself. If there are other needs that your human needs, you got to take care of your human. A lot of people will bypass the human, bypass the vessel, and try and sacrifice that for the art. And I just don't agree with that at all. My philosophy is honor the human. Get in right relationship with what it actually needs. Because when your vessel is operating from a place of full energy, you actually have capacity to hold that creative flow way more. Like when you're well nourished, when you're well fed, when you're well fucked, when you're well loved, like your capacity to hold that creative energy naturally expands. And if you're in a season when you are not partnered, then you get to get creative in how you get those very, very real needs met. You may take a lover. You may go through a season of being self-partnered and really explore like giving yourself those nutrients. And then you may come up with something totally different. But you can't override the actual needs of the human. And I really believe that sometimes sabotage happens because we are trying to strong arm or override the needs of the human. We're not in right relationship with that. And so it's almost like a protest. Our body, our psyche will protest against that control, against that forcing energy, and it will quote unquote sabotage, which is actually just an attempt to find coherence in the sense of there are certain needs that are being avoided or ignored or even making them wrong. And the deeper intelligence of your sacred system knows that in order to really bring your creative vision to life, you have to be in approval of your wholeness. Your wholeness is your whole mess, is where the holiness exists inside of you. And that requires you to take care of your vessel. It requires you to take care of your human. And if there is a certain need that you have and you're denying it, then you might be more susceptible to sabotaging, quote unquote, your creativity, because you're trying to like override the basics here of what it takes to have a really fine-tuned vessel that can hold the magnitude of that creative flow. So all that to say, like sabotage, it can really be a sacred companion if you know how to look at it, if you know how to relate to it. And that will require your sacred sight, that will require your creative ingenuity. To be able to see beyond what people normally just see. And be able to tune in to the deeper truth there. That ultimately, if you're destined to be a poet, a writer, a painter, a musician, and you know that, and you are giving your commitment to that, there's no amount of sabotage that will take you off that track completely. You may detour. And what I will say is that the artists and creatives who detour and don't come back, they do so because there is so much shame in their architecture that they don't know how to properly emotionally process life. They likely have spent a lifetime denying their actual needs and making themselves or making other people wrong, and like not knowing how to alchemize disappointment. Like there's all of these factors that once you're already off the path, when there's a lot of shame that you're saturating yourself in, it can be harder to come back into the pocket of creativity and creation, but not impossible. But the ones who stay off track forever are the ones who just kind of give up in the face of shame. So by having this conversation, you're already getting a different roadmap of, wait, you can always come back. You can always come back to the path. Always come back to your creative spirit. Everything that you're experiencing or have experienced, you can use as fuel. You can use as inspiration. You can literally alchemize it through your art, through your creativity. And when you perform that creative alchemy, you're never not in connection with your creativity. And I think people forget that. Like if you are living, if you are breathing, you are always in connection with your creativity. Whether or not you're consciously aware of that or not is a different question. But you're always in relationship to it. You cannot fully abandon it. If you are living, if you are human, you can't. Because every day you require your creative faculties to, even if you're just going through the motions, you require that energy to go through the motions. So you can tap into it and redirect it at any time. And if you are in this season of overflow with your creativity, just know that there's nothing wrong with having a little detour lovership or relationship. Just do it from a place of sovereignty. Do it from a place of integrity. Do it from a place of very clear agreements of what this is, what this isn't. And when someone is truly in service to your creativity and in service to the creative dreams in your heart and the vision that you hold, of course, that's a really important avenue to explore. When people are amplifiers to your creative energy and your dreams, those are the people that you don't want to skip over. Let yourself go into those experiences. Let those experiences inform your art. Let your art inform those experiences. And then just know, do yourself a solid and do a little bit of exploration on your past. These are the specific energy signatures that really do me dirty, but I'm deeply attracted to. And the part of me that's attracted is the part of me that's actually terrified of the full expression of my dreams and my gifts. And so I'm not letting that part drive the bus. And so I make different decisions and different choices when someone comes into my life who has that energy signature of oh, I've been here before. I know how this ends. And I love and respect myself and my creativity far too much to engage. And I'm going to pour that energy, that charge into my art. I'm going to pour it into taking good care of myself and my vessel and kind of tune my frequency to be available and open to connections and dynamics and experiences that amplify my creative fire. Okay. This is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but here we are. So take that, digest it, do with it as you will. If you are in a season where you want to really foster your creativity, I have a few delicious offers that are coming this summer. I have a 4-week coaching container. This is a very, very intimate space. There are only 9 spaces available. 2 of them have already been spoken for. And 4 weeks, lots of my time in the session with you, and we will be focused on fostering your creativity, a specific creative project that you have, bringing your creative expression to life, however that looks. That's what we're going to be focused on there. And then a little bit later in July, I will be launching my new program called Feast and Feral. And this is where we take care of the vessel. This is where we dive into conversations about food, sex, love, creativity, all of the things that really juice us up as women to continue to create. So we really have a focus there on nourishment in all of its various forms and working with your feminine physiology and creating in tandem with your feminine physiology and the seasons of your feminine cycle and nourishment. We're going to be talking about food. Y'all know I love to nerd out about food. I love cooking. And so we'll be really exploring those threads as well. And, you can't be in a container with me without talking about love, sex, and creativity. So we'll also be doing that, because when we look at nourishment in terms of how it serves our creative expression, it's a whole different conversation. And how we look at and treat our bodies in terms of really creating the conditions for the most expansive creative expression to come through them. It changes the game. And if you are very much anti-patriarchy, then you have to unwind those ways of relating to your body and relating to food and relating to your creative expression and your turn on and your desire. And very much like the story I told earlier in this episode, where I led with my desire, I led with what I truly wanted, and I created that into form. That came from a place of being well nourished. Like, I was clear. I knew what I wanted. I led with the desire. No fucking games. No bullshit. Just clarity of desire. And it is so much easier to lead with clarity of desire when you are well nourished. When we have, a lot of approval around your desire and what passionately brings you to life, and when you are plugged into your creativity. So much easier to continue to serve the creative dreams in your heart when we have this sequence in motion. So as you can tell, I'm very excited about it. I can't wait to open the doors to that. And so stay tuned. If that is something that you're like, oh my God, I really, 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 really want to be there, you can just message me on Instagram and let me know, and I will grab your details and make sure that you get the first dibs to come in. And if you'd like to come into Express, which is the 4-week container on creativity, the link will be in the show notes for that. And if you'd like to book a 1-to-1 session and do a creative vortex with me, I'm doing 5 of these sessions, and I'm setting them at half price. So they will be $333 for the first 5 that are claimed. And after that, it's up to $777 for these sessions, because we do go quite deep. And well, they are just pure magic. So, and they are rarely under 90 minutes. So there's a good chunk of time that we invest in those sessions. And if you have a creative dream that you want to explore, if you want to work on your creativity, that is a really great offer if you would prefer a more 1-to-1 space. And I will put that in the show notes as well. And I love you all. Thank you for being here, for sticking it out. And if you really enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, a review on Apple. You can leave a comment on the episode on Spotify. That really helps get the podcast out to more people who would really benefit from this conversation. And of course, if you would like to share it with someone who you know it would make a difference for, that would mean the world to me. And I love you all, and I will be speaking with you again soon. Bye, friends.